Welcome back to the Gospelogin channel. I'm still going through questions people have asked me, and one of the questions I got recently was, should churches do Easter egg hunts as like an outreach community project on Resurrection Sunday? And so I'm going to tell you about that, but go ahead and watch to the end because I've got a really fun story for you that you're probably not going to expect, and I will tell that at the end of this video. So here's the thing. Let's go ahead and dissect this. First of all, for those of you who aren't from the pagan country of America, an Easter egg hunt is where we have maybe a giant fluffy bunny costume that hops around, and we take a bunch of Easter eggs and we fill them with chocolate and candy and treats, and we spread them out in the yard, and all the kids go look for the Easter eggs, and they come back and they find chocolate, and the kids are happy because they got to treasure hunt and they got candy, and all kids love candy, so that just works. But one of the practices in America, especially among big evangelical churches, is to go out and host these Easter egg events for our communities. And it's billed as outreach. And so the question is, should churches be doing that? And the first thing I'd like to do is challenge the idea of whether or not it's actually outreach. So first of all, Christian outreach always includes the gospel. You can go rub shoulders with people, you can go meet with people, but if the gospel doesn't happen, if Jesus conversations don't happen, it's not Christian outreach. It's just, I'm just doing stuff where I interact with other people. And so for Christians, I think we need to start with being very much discipleship, great commandment minded people. We're out here to go reach people for Jesus. I don't get to just interact with you. I'm hoping that Jesus rubs off on you, that like my testimony shines something. I can use words to help explain the gospel to you at some point in our relationship. That should be the goal. So first of all, I would say that most Easter egg hunts don't even count as outreach because the gospel isn't shared. Sometimes they're invited to church. But then I guess we could talk about the effectiveness of these type of things, and we could say, how many of the people at your Easter egg hunt actually come back for church on Sunday and then hear a gospel message? And I think those would actually be two different answers. Number one, a small fraction of those people are actually going to come back to your church for service. And then an even smaller fraction of people that come back to those kinds of churches are actually going to hear the gospel. But let's look at the philosophy behind it. What are we celebrating on Resurrection Sunday? It's a day that's been set aside by a lot of Christians for many years to celebrate the time after Jesus has paid for man's sin on the cross, and he was buried, he rose again on the third day. And that's like the one distinguisher from every other religion. No other religion gets to show you an empty tomb where their main leader rose from the dead and was not only resurrected other people from the dead, but then was resurrected from the dead himself, lived, had witnesses see it, and moved on. In fact, most historians, if they are ethical, cannot deny the historicity of Jesus. There tends to be more proof for his existence than almost any other person, even in a technological age with video. It's very clear that Jesus was around. And then the number of eyewitness testimonies affirming this guy's resurrection, and then the fact that the people that follow him and believe this has lasted for over 2,000 years faithfully, even to martyrdom, is really hard to combat. There's some strong evidence that this really happened, and it's something we can believe in. And so, as a Christian, it's one of the highlights of our religion and our belief system that we had the Son of God here with us, and he proved that when he rose from the dead. And so we take one extra Sunday just to focus on that resurrection to make sure that it doesn't get missed and all the other good teachings and good things you can learn about. It's good to set aside some time to be like, hey, Jesus is our resurrected Lord, and that means a lot. So we're celebrating this fact that Jesus rose from the dead. And here's one of the questions I think we need to ask is, how are you going to tie in an Easter egg hunt to this? But maybe a better question to ask would be, should you tie in an Easter egg hunt? Because where do this Easter bunny springtime thing come from? Where do the eggs come from and the bunnies? I'm going to let you go down your own rabbit trail, so to speak, because this actually comes from the pagan practice of Ishtar. There's lots of pagan practices and holidays that coincide with similar times of Christian holidays. And I think maybe in the early church, sometimes they took days that they would have been celebrating a holiday in their old life before Jesus, and then they were like, hey, we're actually going to celebrate some Christian stuff. It's like me. On Halloween, I don't celebrate Halloween. I do celebrate Reformation Day, though, which is also October 31st, and I love that. But actually, Resurrection Sunday has way more credence than even the pagan practice of Easter and celebrating springtime. But the way the pagans practiced this was they talked about the bunny and its fertility and springtime, and that's all this other stuff. So it's actually a very pagan thing to do the whole Easter egg thing. And so I think connecting pagan practices with Orthodox Christian holidays and statements of faith is a really terrible idea. So I would say these two can't connect. But if you tried to connect them, my next question would be is, why? Why would I try to connect this? Am I possibly going to dilute the message of Jesus Christ rising from the grave? And I think that's a serious thing. I would never want to dilute the message of the gospel by something I was doing, especially to someone who might be lost and on their way to hell. My argument would be that a church should never do this. In fact, some words I would use actually is I would say this is prostitution of Christ's church to engage in a completely secular pagan holiday on a day that's set aside to focus on the resurrection of our Lord. I just think it's completely undefensible. And I'm appalled that churches would ever consider doing that. I think it's a terrible, awful thing. But if you are doing that, I think many of the excuses you hear is this helps us reach the community. You need to define what reaching your community looks like, because meeting people and inviting them to your church is not necessarily an outreach. If the gospel's not there, it's not outreach. And second of all, are these people really coming to church and becoming disciples? And I don't know why balloons just went by. Okay, I don't know why that's happening. But anyway, are these people really doing that? Because maybe it's not as effective as you think it is. And also, should you dilute the gospel message? Is that an okay thing? But here's my fun story, because I promised you a fun story. And this is a story of Joe at an Easter egg hunt. So here you go. One day, my kids and I, we lived in this town that did an Easter egg hunt. And they actually did their Easter egg hunt on Good Friday. And I thought, no way, Jose. And my kid asked me, hey, can we go to the town Easter egg hunt? And I said, no, we cannot, because that is Good Friday. And we're going to think about Jesus Christ hanging on a cross, taking the payment for my sin. We're going to do that instead of actually doing the Easter egg thing. And my son looks at me and he says, Daddy, if this is all about celebrating Jesus, can we go to the Easter egg hunt and tell them about Jesus? And I said, sure, kid. I'm going to call the director of the community Easter egg hunt and ask them if I can present the gospel. If they let me, I will take you to that Easter egg hunt. To my great surprise, when I called, they said, absolutely, sir. We will give you 5 minutes at the beginning of our Easter egg hunt to share the gospel story, the real meaning behind Easter, which I like to call Resurrection Sunday, and then we'll do our Easter egg hunt after you've prayed for us. And I'm like, okay, let's go. So we hiked on down to that thing, and I got to give the gospel to a bunch of kids, and it was an awesome thing, and it was great. And then the next year they said, we've had complaints, and people don't want the religion out of church. They want it in church, so you can't come out here and give the gospel. So we didn't go to that Easter egg hunt, but I will tell you what I did do. And this is something that I think is a really great compromise that both promotes family worship and a focus on Jesus and helps kids navigate this. You can go on Amazon. In fact, I'll put a link in my description to this, and you can find something called Resurrection Eggs. And they're eggs that tell the gospel story in 12 steps. And the kids find it, and you open it up, and you'll see a little donkey or a little palm leaf. And it's really fun, and we love doing that with our kids. And I highly suggest that maybe you could do that with them as well. So there's my fun story. I hope this has helped you to think. Go ahead and comment below. Does your church do this? And do you put up with it? And do you like it and promote it? Are there arguments in favor of this that I missed? Please go ahead and tell me everything in the comments. And I'll see you next time on the Gospelogin channel.